Jeremy Shaw of Iberian Wine Tours. Welcome to episode 2 of the Armchair Wine Traveller. In this episode we're going to look at the story of some winemakers close to the hills by the Mediterranean who had to reinvent themselves after phylloxera to make a new style of wine, different to the still wines they'd been making for many centuries. They made it in a similar style to the people from Champagne, and suddenly they became well known for a wonderful style of sparkling wine that was a little fuller bodied than Champagne, but that nobody really realised, or to some extent still realised it's there. Welcome to the story of the Corpinnat makers of Catalonia. First of all, let's look at what Cava is and where it comes from. The three biggest sparkling wine markets in the world are Champagne, Prosecco and Cava. Cava is made in the same way as Champagne, the method champenoise, where the second fermentation happens in the bottle. After Champagne was discovered and became widespreadly popular in Barcelona, in the mid-19th century, some Catalan winemakers started making their first sparkling wine. Immediately after that, phylloxera hit, and so there was a lot of replanting of grapes in the Penedès, the region where Cava predominantly comes from. Cava, the name itself, is the word in Spanish for the subterranean cellar where you store wine. And so as the wine was made in Catalonia to age, and was aged for several years very often before it was released, it was named after the place it was aged, the Cava. And because of the new grapes that they had after phylloxera, suddenly the quality became good and the popularity of the drink became good, and that was how Cava became one of the great sparkling wines of the world. Prosecco, by contrast, is made by a tank method, so not as high a quality or not a similar method to the way that sparkling wine is made in Champagne. Cava is unique. It's a wine that should be understood better than it is. Now have a look at how you can understand it a little bit better than perhaps you already do. I'd like to look at some of the things that make Cava similar to other sparkling wines and different. The method is the same as is used in Champagne. The grapes, however, are different. In Champagne you use Chardonnay, Pinot Noir predominantly. In Cava country, although you use a little bit of Chardonnay, you use 3 indigenous Catalan grapes. So in fact, Cava is very terroir driven. Xarel·lo, Parellada and Macabeo are grapes that suit the Penedès terroir and terrain very well. And as long as you pick them young and at high elevations, they have sufficient acidity to be very good base wine to make sparkling wine from. So on the one hand you have the same method as in Champagne, but on the other hand you have very different grape varieties. You're also right next to the Mediterranean, and Cava is the one great sparkling wine made close to the Mediterranean, which tends to give it a bit of a fuller body. And because of the combination of that fuller body and those different grape varieties, Cava tends to be more food friendly than Champagne, which perhaps more typically is better as an aperitif, like Prosecco. Cava, for example, was the wine of choice at the legendary El Bulli restaurant in the hills of Catalonia, the #1 restaurant in the world of Ferran Adrià, to be able to cope with multiple ornate tapas dishes. So if you are looking for a wine that accompanies many styles of tapa, Cava is probably your best bet, because of that distinction that it gets from its terroir, its proximity to the Mediterranean, the grape varieties, and the style that it provides. In terms of volume, it's similar to Champagne and to Prosecco. There's around 250 to 300 million bottles made a year. But in fact, 2 producers make the vast majority of that. Corpinnat and Freixenet, 80% of the Cava. So you have Cava known for commercial production. In fact, the most interesting style of Cava and story of Cava is the others, the small producers that make much more interesting wines in small quantities, in little villages in the north of Catalonia. And we'll talk about that next. So Cava has a challenge that it needs to address. Most people are familiar with Cava because of those 2 large producers and the cheaper, more commercial Cava product that you will come across around the world. It's the most widely exported sparkling wine in the world, and yet most people are familiar with it as a cheap alternative to champagne. In fact, the really interesting Cava is the Reserva and the Grand Reserva Cava. Reserva makes up 10% of the production, Grand Reserva 2% of the production, and that's where you find the really interesting alternatives to champagne. Not trying to be champagne, but worthy wines to stand comparison with them. Recently, Cava has evolved its way of looking at these and representing them through its classification system. One change that has happened is a system calling particular single estate wines paraje calificado. So these are single estate cavas that come from the very best producers, large and small, but are focused on one particular terroir or estate. That's interesting, and that's a very good way to focus on finding a good cava. As a general rule, Gran Reserva is probably the highest quality. It's a minimum of 30 months, but can be many more months. And often it is made by the smallest producers. So the smallest producers had a challenge. How do they get themselves known against the noise of the commercial cava that most people are familiar with? And it is by far the grandest volume. And they came up with an idea that they developed and then actioned in 2019. It's called Corpinnat, which in Catalan literally means from the heart of the Penedès. The idea is that it's representing the small producers and what they can offer to the world of sparkling wine that you won't find anywhere else. So let's look at Corpinnat now in more detail. So what is Corpinnat? Corpinnat really is about being from the heart of the Penedès. It's about a different style of cava. It's about that unique artisan boutique production, typically of Gran Reserva cava. Half of Gran Reserva produced comes from these small producers. Corpinnat, the band of Corpinnat is 9, originally now 10 small producers from around the town of Sant Sadurní, just to the south of Barcelona. Wines that are made under the Corpinnat label have to be hand harvested. They have to be organically made. They have to be made at the winery next to where the grapes are picked. It's very much a terroir driven style. It's a way of representing a style of high quality sparkling wine made in the Cava region that otherwise doesn't get much attention, or certainly the attention it deserves and the attention you should give it if you're a real wine lover. One of those 10 producers is a winery called Llopart. They've been making wine since 1385. Just think about that for a second. Over 600 years. And they've been making Cava since 1887. So they should be knowing what they're doing by now. And they do. And we're going to go and talk to Jesi Llopart, the latest generation of the Llopart family, about what it means to her to be part of the Corpinnat band of new producers, and what Cava production means to them and their family, its history and its future. So Jesi, this is a very historic place to make wine. The family has been here forever. The original heritage was making wine, and then it developed into making cava. So do you see the origin as wine predominantly, or are you a cava family, or more later Corpinnat?
So we started with making wine, of course, and sparkling came in at the end of 19th century. It's when Sant Sadurní, Penedès starts with the cava production, with the sparkling wines. From that time until now, we developed into the sparklings because we saw that it was a perfect conditioned area for the sparkling, so for the quality sparklings. So now we feel like more quality sparkling winemakers.
It's a spectacular and privileged location too, so it's not just a great place to make wine, it must be a great place to live and to be too.
Of course. So we have the chance to be really close from Barcelona, just 40 kilometers from the city, from the center of Barcelona. But when you cross the big city, you arrive in Penedès, and you can enjoy of the nature, of the great sustainable area where we are. So we are really happy to be in here and to enjoy every day of the views. That also Llopart has a outstanding place location, so the views are magnificent.
We always love coming here for the wines, for the place, for the people. What do you think makes Llopart Cava special and different?
So the maybe the knowledge that we have from our ancestors is one of the qualities. So the location, of course, the area. So it's something also that it makes very special. So as we kept our tidy, small, teeny area. All the wines comes from our vineyards, and so so it's a the quality factor, so that people trust with it, and so the people, so that it's what it makes maybe very special for our family.
And I think we talk a little about Cava, but Cava is in fact not what you call yourselves anymore. And one of the reasons we love to come here is to show people who think that Cava and the wines made in the Cava area are not so special, in fact can be very special, very long aged and very distinguished wines. And it's interesting for us to see the Corpinnat movement separating the family producers like yourselves from perhaps mainstream Cava. So how do you feel about the creation of Corpinnat and what that represents for Llopart?
So Llopart is one of the founders of Corpinnat. We started 6 wineries, and we feel very comfortable with this with association. So because we share more or less the same the same objective, the same commitments, and all of them are commitments from the territory and from the quality, to get a great quality to our sparklings. So I think it was a need to create this movement, and it's growing. So now we are 10 wineries, and all the commitments are very related with how we are working from science now. So it's the family, most of our family wineries also. So we grow organically, manual harvesting, all it's vinified into the property. So are factors that makes to show to the consumer that the quality of our sparklings.
I think it shows that you make a wine, and a sparkling wine, that is very special, that some people don't always appreciate. So Corpinnat perhaps opens some doors for you. How do you see the main challenges for you at Llopart for the next generation? What do you think are the things that are going to be your biggest challenges now?
Well, so now we started to get some of these challenges, that it's like to expand our brand around the world. So now we are in 35 different countries, so it's something that we started, but we hope that so the next generation can still expand more. Also the enoturism, that it's getting every time more and more successful in our area, that visitors comes to us and visits the area. So we think that it's all related also with the sustainable to keep of course our area, and to keep the vines and the grapes.
So we've been coming here for 10 years. We thank you for having us and receiving us so well, giving us such lovely experiences, and congratulate you on 500 years or more of doing what you do. So good luck for you for the next 500 years.
Many thanks, and also congratulations for your 10 years anniversary.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's time to see what all the fuss is about. Simon's going to talk us through the Grand Reserva Corpinnat that we're about to drink.
So today we're going to be tasting Llopart's Grand Reserva Panoramic. We're super excited to be tasting one of their premium wines. It's done 42 months in barrel and is say, one of their finest wines, so we're looking forward to tasting it today.
Cheers! Sparkling wine is a very convivial drink, an important part of any wine lover's drinking repertoire. It's also particularly important that if you like sparkling wine, that you find out about the good sparkling wines from the Penedès, that beautiful region on the fringes of the Mediterranean. If you haven't understood them already, or tried many of them, go and find yourself some Grand Reserva Cava, or even better, some Corpinnat, like Llopart, or one of the other 10 Corpinnat producers, and see what all the fuss is about. This is a Reserva that I'm holding from Llopart, their Brut Nature Reserva, a very good example, but not the only one. And if you really like it when you try it, take one step further and travel one day to Barcelona and come with us on an Iberian wine tour down to the heart of the Penedès, the Corpinnat country. See what all the fuss is about and sip a Grand Reserva overlooking the hills with the fragrance of the Mediterranean drifting over the hills towards you. You won't regret it.